Oh, hey, we're getting unwhelmed. Good morning, and welcome to this week's episode of Unwhelming. This morning, we are talking about one of my favorite topics, ADHD. It's one of my favorite topics because it's where I live. So if you are listening or watching the recording, you can catch all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, which you can find in the footer of our website. Commercial over for now. We are Unwhelm Coaching. We are here to provide business coaching by women for women. The definition of the word unwhelm is to raise someone up from something that has overwhelmed them. We are here to unwhelm the overwhelm of business by co-creating solutions that turn women's ideas into reality. We believe that you deserve more time, more money, and more joy, and we work toward a world where all women have the emotional, financial, and technical support to realize their business dreams. We value honesty, empowerment, collaboration, vulnerability, women supporting women, and fun. This morning, I'm going to very quickly run through our agenda. We are going to do a grounding exercise, which we at Unwhelm always start with. Then we'll do a couple of quick introductions and how we conduct our business. You'll get to listen to me talk for a while, yay. And then we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll talk what happens next. So with that, I would love to turn it over to my beautiful, wonderful, fantastic accountability buddy and partner, Elise Padilla, to ground us and bring us in.
Good morning, and welcome to another Unwhelminar. I am more than excited to be here. It is the highlight of my week. So, like Katie said, we believe in grounding and finding our center before we really get into the heavy work of it all, making sure that we know our place. So I'd like to invite you all to join me in this grounding practice, and of course, to your comfort level. So please, in this moment, if we can silence all of the world around us, mainly our cell phones, getting ourselves on Do Not Disturb. And I ask that if you can, bring your gaze down and keep it soft. If you'd like, close your eyes so that we can join in this moment together to find ourselves in this space. Today, our grounding practice is for getting out of your head. So it's time to give your thinking mind a break. To gently prepare yourself for this, I ask that you either sit on the earth, the floor, a chair, somewhere that we can find our space. Sit yourself comfortably, but also keep your back straight and your shoulders relaxed. You're safe and alive in only this moment. Don't let it slip away from you, and bring your awareness to what you're sitting on, be it the earth or a chair, and focus on the parts of your body that are directly supported by the ground. Your butt, your thighs, feeling them grow heavy, and feeling the ground rise up to hold them. Stay here for 5 deep, long breaths, bringing the air to the low belly, making sure we inhale the deepest breath that we've taken for today. You are home, you are safe, and it's through our breath that we find our healing. After these 5 breaths, travel up your body, bringing your attention to your chest. Here, let's take another 10 deep breaths, filling up our lungs, that wonderful healing power of the air around us. We feel our lungs expand with each breath that we take. In these breaths, we identify feelings of fullness in our body. We grab onto that sensation of fullness and we place it somewhere safe in our bodies. Carrying these healing breaths throughout our day, I ask you to return to this fullness whenever you feel stressed with just one deep breath, bringing us home, knowing that we are safe, we are worthy, and we are ready. Sealing it all, thanking you all for joining me in this space.
Thank you. Thank you, Elise. I would like to give a giant nod to the value of grounding in a meeting. And I'd like to acknowledge that it is often regarded as a feminine or soft or sort of woo-woo kind of setting. But it is incredibly helpful no matter what kind of meeting, one-on-one or group or Zoom or in person. It's an incredibly helpful practice, and you can, if necessary, bring it into the business world and still operate within the very strict rules of the patriarchy and capitalism by pointing to the science around deep breathing and how it centers our attention and how it increases attention, retention, and creative thinking. Quick introduction. I'm going to share my screen for those of you who are seeing us. I am Katie Christianson. I am CEO, owner, and head bitch in charge at Unwhelm Coaching. I started Unwhelm Coaching because I recognized the deep need of support for women by women in business. I will say again that women face a unique position and a unique set of challenges within business, and we are here to acknowledge all of that and support you from a uniquely female point of view. With me today and every day is my incredibly valuable accountability buddy and partner, Elise Padilla. She is the owner and CEO of Rebel Leadership Group. And you should know that Elise is one of the strongest strategic thinkers I have ever met, and she possesses an incredibly unique ability to take someone's brilliant idea and break it down into very concrete, doable steps so that everybody wins. Thank you, as always, Elise. So today we're going to talk about unwhelming ADHD. I want to run through the steps, the principles and processes of the practice of unwhelming. The first step is acknowledging everything that got us here. It's all just so overwhelming. It's not your fault, but you get to fix it. The second step is face your feelings. And with that, facing the inner asshole that lives in all of us. This week's blog post was about how to gently hush your inner asshole. That's the voice in your head that tells you you're not doing anything right, or that you're a failure, or that you should be ashamed. Spoiler alert, she loves you, that person in your head, and she's here to protect you. But we have tools to help you pass her gently on her way. Step 3 is honest tracking and accounting. Slow down to speed up. Step 4 is find your focus, because strategic planning doesn't have to suck. Step 5 is to systems and solutions. It is to systematize, automate, and duplicate wherever possible. Step 6, who can help and how? Hyperindependence is a trauma response, and we have ways that we can mitigate that response and soften it so that we can accept and give help. And step 7 is staying unwhelmed. This is where we embrace the philosophy that your productivity does not equal your worth, that overwhelm does not equal successful. And we tell you, just be like Beyonce, don't break your soul, fuck the grind. Next, we are going to talk about how is ADHD my superpower? I first, though, have to give you a little bit of background, because ADHD is my superpower, but it has not always been. I have said before, I will say it again, any superhero will tell you that their super strength is also their greatest weakness. My grandfather, when I was a young child, would say one thing to me more almost than he would say my name or almost anything else he would say to me. And it was this: Kathleen, would you just light somewhere? And he would say that because I was always moving and always talking and always busy. And it made him crazy because he was not that way. And the answer to his question was, no, I can't. There was no way that I could. I was too TOO all the time, too much, too loud, too fast, too busy, too smart, too bossy, all of those things. And in my childhood, I didn't recognize that as ADHD, and I didn't know how to cope with it. I was medicated when I was young, and it was when there were not a lot of options available for medicating attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So we stopped doing the medication, and I just suffered a lot through school, through my young adulthood, through my first jobs. And it was not until I probably hit 45 and nearly 50 that I recognized that my ADHD was a superpower. Typically, pause here to say, I am not a doctor. I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. I cannot diagnose ADHD. I'm not an expert in ADHD. What I am an expert in is my ADHD and my experience and what I have done to make it easier for me to function in this world. Spoiler alert, the things that I do to manage my ADHD are also things that help people in business without ADHD. Yay! That means that ADHD is my superpower because I have developed ways to manage it that work for everyone in the real world, and you all get the benefit of that. As a general rule, ADHD presents in three ways. It's either inattention, the kids who are typically daydreaming, or the adults who don't remember what you said 3 minutes ago. It is predominantly hyperactive impulsive, and that's the jumping around, the jimmy leg when you're sitting still, the very excited all the time. And then the third is a combination of the two. Lots and lots of us have a combination of the two, which makes it difficult for people to understand, because inattention can look like laziness, or it can look like disinterest, whereas hyperactivity can look like incredible focus and tons of energy. In women, though, it shows up sometimes differently, and partly that's because of how we're wired, but partly it's because of how society expects us to be. Women and young girls are trained from a very young age to present a very specific way to society. We are trained to be aware of other people's feelings and emotions. We are trained to read the room all the time, and we're trained to make sure that we look the right way. So in women, it can look like workaholism because we are expected to work twice as hard as men anyway. And then those of us who do try to manage ADHD just feel like we can't quite get done. So I frequently would feel like I would have colleagues who could get their work done, or who were really meeting deadlines and who were just killing it. And I just couldn't. So I'd work 2 or 3 times as hard as they did just to get the job done. It can look like people pleasing and codependency, because people with ADHD often are like a room with the doors not just open, but just blown off. All of the signals and all of the input comes in all the time. So it's really hard to filter what is important and what is less important. So if we're feeling all the feelings and getting all of the information all the time, we know right away when someone is unhappy, and we work really hard to make that stop, because it's a lot easier to manage all of the other information that's coming into my head if I don't also have to wonder what I did wrong. It looks like chaos. If your life is chaos, if you can't find one area of your life that feels calm and in order, that's very common. It can look like low self-esteem, because women are also trained to accept the blame for almost everything. You do not hear men go, oh my God, I had a piece of cake after lunch and I feel so guilty. Or I went and got a mani-pedi last week. I was so worried the whole time. It was hard for me to enjoy because it was guilty. You don't typically hear men saying, I took Tuesday afternoon off and took my kid and we went to go do bumper cars. It was really hard for me to be away from work and I kept checking my phone. But that's a conversation that women have quite frequently. It also feeds into a cultural issue where that becomes the norm. And if you are in a conversation, it is really normal to hear women saying to each other that they're super overwhelmed and they're constantly busy, and that becomes the normal conversation. And so that all leads up to chronic stress. And your ADHD can show up as constantly stressed because you're trying to juggle all of the things. It shows up in business 2 ways. It shows up as organizational ADHD and as leadership ADHD. If your business or organization has ADHD, you will find that you have unfunded mandates. So something will frequently be spoken about as sort of coming down from the top. School districts are famous for this. We are going to do X, and you'll have an initiative or a campaign, but there won't be a full plan behind it. So it won't have the funding to get it off the ground, or the leadership won't have the structure in place so that you can continue to monitor its progress. There will be an inability of the leadership and the team to articulate any strategic planning, a lack of mission, vision, values, clarity. So within your organization or within your business, if you ask any employee, what is the mission of this company? They should be able to tell you without hesitation, because it should be embedded into everything that goes on within the company. As an individual, if someone in public says, what do? You should be able to say, I run a business doing X, and this is why. And your mission should drive everything you do. If that doesn't happen, you end up with organizational ADHD. This is where the shiny objects and the squirrels come in. Those of us with ADHD are a little bit like crows, and we're very attracted to shiny objects. They're very exciting, and our brain craves that excitement. So if we just sort of catch wind of this great group that we think we should belong to, suddenly we find that even though it's not really part of our mission, we are suddenly hosting an every Tuesday men's group from Unwhelm Coaching. And that doesn't make any sense, but it seemed like a great idea, and it was very exciting. In leaders, it will look like and express as undependability, because the leaders are very busy chasing those shiny objects and the squirrels. They often aren't able to fulfill obligations that they have made. So it means that they can't be depended on. You can have a high turnover or a quote failure rate. I use quotes around that word because every business failure is a learning opportunity, and is also a lot of the time not necessarily a failure. It's just what was supposed to happen. But you will, in an organization whose leaders have ADHD, because they cannot communicate well, or because they have an inability to follow through, you'll find a high turnover rate, because it does really make the other members of the organization very frustrated. Leaders with ADHD will often favor ideas over education. And so that's over execution. And that's where those unfunded mandates and unfinished campaigns come in, because they get really excited about an idea, and they'll be great to hear any idea you want to bring to the table, but they will not have the capacity or the team surrounding them to create the structure and infrastructure to make those ideas happen. It looks like communication problems, because if you're paying attention to all the things all the time, you're not prioritizing. And so important emails and text messages and phone calls might go missing. And you might be spending a lot of your time in meetings that you don't really need to have, because you have not prioritized and structured those meetings. And all of those things lead to burnout in leaders and burnout in staff. But, and here's the but, ADHD has surprising benefits. Organizational ADHD means that your organization or business is really nimble. So you may be able to pivot and follow new ideas and follow those fantastic shiny objects and squirrels very quickly. It means that you might be on the cutting edge, or you might be innovative within your industry. It can be really exciting to work for an organization with ADHD, because everything's so possible. Possibilities are endless. And it often comes with a really high amount of energy. So if you're somebody who craves that excitement, it can really be an okay thing. The benefits of ADHD in leaders is that they are fantastic idea people, and they're often quite open to collaboration, and they're definitely open to change, and can be a lot of fun. Now that you know a little bit about how ADHD shows up for us, how it shows up for women, and how it shows up in business, let's talk about how we can pivot and how we can harness those benefits. I'm going to pause for just a minute and ask Elise to please drop a few more links in chat. And there will be some articles. I'm going to recommend the organization CHADD and the magazine Attitude. I also am going to stop for just a moment and see if anybody in the group wants to talk about an experience of working for an organization or a leader with ADHD. And if you can think about what made you crazy about working for that organization.
So I have one if I can jump in.
Please, Elise.
So an experience that I had in working with an organization that exhibited these behaviors is we had a wonderful opportunity to get together for a retreat for the entire team and to do some strategic planning. We worked so diligently. We worked so hard trying to gather the information that would be goals related to our team. We put in time before and after the strategic planning session that we had facilitated by a third party. And we submitted all of the information for our team's strategic plan pieces. And 6 months after the retreat, we still had not actualized the strategic plan or moved forward on any of the goals that we had worked so hard to complete. And for me, that was extremely overwhelming in the sense that I needed direction and where to go. But it also made me feel like the work that we had done wasn't valid and wasn't appreciated because it was never applied to the work itself. And so coming into that place, now realizing that it may have come from a leader that was exhibiting these symptoms from an organization that chased the shiny objects and would follow the squirrels as they came about, I can now approach that with compassion, but I can also see it as an opportunity for growth for myself as a leader in any organizations that I work with in the future.
Thank you, Elise. Yeah, that I've had a similar experience where I was very dedicated to creating the structures and infrastructure to bring about organizational change. But because we didn't have commitment, all of that work seemed for naught. And I luckily took a lot of the lessons I've been learning, and I I terminated that contract early because I was very clear that this was not the place for me. And that's one way that I have harnessed the power of my ADHD. I got to where I am in my ability to manage ADHD by following the steps of unwhelming. And I'm just going to pop this up on the screen once again. And of course, these steps are sort of everywhere embedded in the unwhelming world. But I want to talk about how that translated to my being able to own and manage and run a business while hanging out here in ADHD land. The first step, it's all just so overwhelming, was for me to really stop and acknowledge that what was happening may be a direct result of my actions, but wasn't my fault. And by that, I don't mean that you absolve yourself of any responsibility, but if you want to know more about this step, you can definitely check out last week's video or the podcast, which will be posted later this week. And we talk about the way that society sets us up as women. And I can talk about the way that the world is structured, and the business world in particular is structured for people who are neurotypical, who can have an idea, think about what it takes to execute that idea, and then follow the steps to execute that idea. And if you don't possess that ability, or if it does not align, then the world is not set up for you to succeed. Any kid with ADHD who has been through a school system of any sort will tell you that the classroom, and as adults, the business world can be our classroom. It's just not set up as a place for us to succeed. Once I acknowledged that it was not my fault, but I got the opportunity to fix it, I had to go back and acknowledge all of those feelings. Something that's particular to women is true in probably most folks with ADHD. But again, I can't speak to those experiences. I can only talk about mine. Something that is really particular is that because we are operating within a system that doesn't support us, we tend to not be able to succeed. With those lack of success experience comes shame and embarrassment and overwhelm and failure. And I have been an entrepreneur a dozen times over, and here I am not running any of those businesses that I started. So I had to look at all of those and say, oh, those looked like failures and it looked like they were my fault. And then I had to let it go. There are some tips for how to do that because it can be really overwhelming. And of course, our first suggestion whenever we're unwhelming, folks, is to get a therapist. But in lieu of that, if you want to do some work on your own, you can check the blog post that came out last week. You can just check it on the website. It's called How to Gently Hush Your Inner Asshole. And it talks about ways that you can reframe those feelings so that you go from feeling shame and despair that none of this is ever going to work. And you can find ways, you can follow a process that helps you say, I am so grateful for those opportunities and excited to apply this learning. That's where I am right now, and it is very exciting. But just like all of the other processes in unwhelming, it's not a one and done. You're not going to have one conversation with your inner asshole and she's going to go, oh, okay, I get it. I mean, I've been living here for 50 years, but that's cool. I got it. You don't need me. I'll just be on my way. In the same way that your kids are probably never going to say, oh, gee, mom, thanks for putting structure on my life and limiting my activities so that I become a great adult. That shit just does not happen. You'll be lucky if it happens when they're 30s, 40s, 50s. But you will have to have that conversation over and over and gently place those parameters around what your inner asshole can influence. Give her your love and send her on her way because she's persistent. I was listening to a fantastic book the other day by Denise Duffield Thomas, and she said something that was really fantastic. She said, be more persistent than your ego. Your inner asshole is part of your ego. You just have to be more persistent than she is. Step 3 is honest tracking and accounting, and this is really hard for most people, and it's especially tough for people with ADHD because one of the things that I have to do is place incredibly strict boundaries around my time and how I'm going to get that tracking done. And so I will start tracking my time, and it will look like this. I'm just going to enter these hours on my spreadsheet. What's the time I'm going to spend this week? I'll click over to my calendar so that I'm entering things that I've already scheduled. On my calendar, I will see that I need to take the dog to the vet in Albuquerque. Oh, I don't have the address for the dog in Albuquerque. I don't have the address for that vet. I'd better put it in the calendar so that when I get in the car, I know where I need to go. I click over to the web, oh God, help me. And I Google the vet's address, and then I see that they need a confirmation of vet records. And I think, oh, I better just real quick email them the vet records. But then I realize the vet records are all on paper. So I need to scan those into the printer and make sure that I have them in a PDF. But I get the folder out and I go over to the printer and I put the papers on the printer. The printer won't connect to my computer. So then I have to go back to my computer and I disconnect the printer and then reconnect the printer. And then I notice that maybe our internet connection is slow. So I just real quick run a speed test and I noticed that our modem isn't getting the speeds I thought it would. So I just real quick call the cable company. Then it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I have not submitted any invoices to any clients, but I've done a lot of really important things. So honest tracking and accounting requires incredible discipline, and it is not something that comes naturally, and you cannot make it work the first time by just jumping in. You have to set up systems that make it work. When I do my planning for the week, I turn off all notifications, and I will often even disconnect my Wi-Fi. It sounds silly, but if my Wi-Fi isn't working and I am tempted to pop over and look at something on the internet, I can't get there. And it isn't designed as punishment or to shame me. It's designed to make my brain go, oh, that's right. Let me just focus where I need to focus. I also rely on ritual. I listen to music when I am doing my planning. I rely on systems. I use the same notebook and the same set of pens every time. So I use all of the tools in my toolbox to make sure that that honest tracking and accounting can happen accurately. I will probably say this about every step in the unwhelming process, but step 4, find your focus, is vital for folks with ADHD. Without an incredibly clear, deep understanding of your business or organization's strategic plan, and I would argue of your own personal vision, mission, and values, you will find yourself attracted to other people's ideas, and you will spend hours and hours and hours feeding other people's dreams or feeding the wrong dream or paying attention to the wrong items. And even that language is is perhaps not appropriate. There, you will find yourself doing the things that don't lead you to your places of deepest joy. And in your business, you'll find that you're paying attention to the things that don't necessarily bring you more time and more money, and that don't necessarily further they don't make your pocket any heavier. They may be great ways to spend your time, but they may not be a great way to focus your time on business. This is the place where slowing down to speed up is really important, where finding your strategic plan and really honing in is going to focus your business and help you manage that ADHD. I literally have the Unwhelm coaching strategic plan written on a 3-foot by 4-foot piece of paper, a poster on my wall in great big marker. And when I am presented with a new idea or a set of activities, I look at that mission, vision, and values, and I say, does this fit? And I make sure that I have an accountability buddy, Elise, who really focuses me, and we focus on what are our goals, which are fed by and informed by and part of your strategic plan. If we have great ideas that don't align with goals, we bookmark them and come back to them. And Elise is so great at gently and kindly saying to me, does that focus on your goal this week? And once again, giant spoiler alert, if she asks me that question, the answer is already no, but we have established a delicious shared language where she can ask me that and I don't get mad. I did once upon a time have an agreement with my older sister to say, if at any point we were acting like our mother, to say, excuse me, you're acting like your mom. Just want to be really clear, that was not an actual real agreement and it didn't really work out. So with at least luckily, she has my full permission. We have a deep understanding of what she means when she says, yes, that's a great idea. Does it align with our goals this week? It's incredibly important. And we know this because we have an incredibly clear strategic plan. We have goals that are broken down from 5 years out to today. And we make sure that we stay on top of those goals. For me, it requires that I write those goals down repeatedly. I will write them at the top of my planner pages. I will send them in an email to Elise. Elise will send them in a text to me. It requires constant reminding because the ADHD mind pays attention to what is in front of it right now. Step 5, systematize, automate, duplicate. Systems and solutions are absolutely incredible for freeing your ADHD mind. If I did not have these systems in place, my life would be in enormous chaos, and it has been there. Because I also have a clear personal strategic plan and mission, I understand what works for me. And one of the things that I value is an uncluttered living environment, because I am a visual thinker. And if there's clutter in my visual environment, I will pay attention to that. And I will pay attention to that even if I don't do anything about it. It weighs down my mind. It impacts everything I do. I have friends for whom clutter is not a problem, and more power to you. That's great. But if it's something that's important to you, put systems in place that make sure it does not get out of hand and doesn't distract you. My desk is ruthlessly clean and organized, and I feel anxiety if it's a little bit out of order. But I have systems and solutions that make sure that I can easily access that order. I hired a house cleaning service before I could afford it because I knew that if I stopped for 1 minute to wipe down the kitchen counter, it would lead to the kitchen floor full of the things that belong under the kitchen sink, because I thought that I should probably take a minute to organize the cabinet under the sink so I could easily reach the spray bottle to wipe down the counters. I am not kidding, folks. This is how my brain works. And I just want to take a minute to say that I have friends who don't struggle with this, and they tell me that they don't have a constant conversation going on in their head. And I think, your world must be so quiet. Sometimes I think, oh, that must be really nice. But then sometimes I think I offered an opportunity to my inner asshole to reframe that set of sentiments. And I think, oh, this is great. I don't necessarily have to process all of this out loud because I have at least 2 of us to talk to all the time in my head. She also told me that when she comes in the door, she knows where her coat is. She knows where her keys are. She knows where her phone is. She never loses her phone. How the hell does that even happen? I used to find my iPhone so frequently. Yesterday or the day before, I was baffled because I couldn't find it. I had an ADHD moment. I took a moment to reorganize a cabinet and set my phone on the top shelf, closed the door, and walked away. This is the sort of thing that I manage all the time. And this is why I have systems in place that keep the bumpers on my brain, because the less I have to track, the more time that I spend on those strategic values. Step 6 is a place that was really difficult for me to get to. That's who can help and how. My accountability buddy, Elise, my business accountability buddy, is incredible for helping me keep the bumpers on my lanes and to keep my wheels going in the same direction. She and I have had great conversations about how to have those conversations of accountability, how to keep each other in check. It's a give and take. So she's not babysitting me and she's not scolding me. We're having a conversation where we're both really clear about what the outcome needs to be. Again, in my business life, because I work from home and because my business is my life, I have to take steps to find accountability buddies elsewhere. So I did hire a cleaning service. I did have a conversation with my housemates, also my son and my husband and the dog. And 2 of 3 of them agreed to help me in very specific ways. But again, talking about those previous steps, I had to be really clear about what was important to me so I knew what to ask for. Because otherwise, you may find yourself allegedly, as a wife and mother, having the same conversations over and over and over. And they may sound something like, you guys, I just asked that the recycling not be overflowing. How many times do I have to ask that? Or, I guess I'll unload the dishwasher now, like I did last time. Those conversations are incredibly destructive to relationships, and they just lead to that cycle of shame and hyper independence. And so when I got really clear about my personal mission, I was able to be very clear with what I needed and be able to accept help. And then number 7, staying unwhelmed. Holy cow, is this hard for me. In my closet right now, I have probably $100 worth of candle making supplies, because I literally thought that it would save me time and money to make my own candles. I share these experiences with you not because I'm ashamed. I share these experiences with you because this is how my life is. And I found out that this is how life is for so many other people, especially women. But there's so much shame around it that we don't talk about it. I would love to tell you that I feel zero shame about the candle making supplies in my closet. That's not true. I feel shame about it, and I have a conversation with my inner asshole, and we get to the point where we can laugh about it and chuckle. And so then I can say, there's $100 of candle making supplies sitting 10 feet from me that I haven't even taken out of the packaging, and I can laugh about it, because that means that then you can talk about your experiences. We can demystify, destigmatize it, and we can share community that supports one another to understand that this is a process and a practice. We keep coming back to it. It's how we stay unwhelmed. It's how I keep that ADHD in check. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to say that I am putting in place a system that will give you, my wonderful Unwhelm community, access to all of the things that I do on a daily basis to keep that squirrel in the tree and not running across my vision, to keep those shiny objects right where they belong and keep my mind on track. And also ways that you can give yourself free rein to feel the feelings, to chase the shiny objects, to do the things that your brain wants to do. And I'll be offering them to you in tiny little bite-sized pieces. You will be able to find them in various places, the website, or we're working on a text messaging system that will give you a daily ADHD tip. We don't want these to be overwhelming, so you can take them or leave them. You can use them or not use them. You can bookmark them or not. And you can always start right where you are, always. So I would like to take a moment and a breath and a sip of coffee and open the floor to Q&A. And I'm going to actually mute myself and do some clicking so I make sure we're not missing Q&A elsewhere.
I got a question, Katie.
Susie, I'd love to hear it. Yes.
Well, can you just talk about, I've been sitting here thinking about medication for ADHD,
Yeah.
and then also realizing, like, what do I want you to say about it? Like, I don't need your permission, and there's no, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, great talk. I definitely can see myself all over the place, although I'm realizing that since leadership roles are new to me, all over the place. I'm realizing that the leadership roles are new to me. Uh-oh, is that me?
It's me.
And that, okay, and that
roles are new. Got it.
So that's it.
Sorry, so leadership roles are new to you, and so you're trying to figure out how to incorporate your experiences within that?
Right, and also the older I get, the more I'm seeing how ADHD impacts my ability to be an employee. And so the best thing for me to do is to go forward into the land of employer.
Yeah, that. Susie, I feel like you've touched on some pieces that could be Unwhelminars and 6-week series for sure. I mean,
That's what I do. That's the idea.
I am a terrible employee. I am really bad at taking orders and at just staying in my lane. I will hop into a workplace and I will go, well, this is a mess. I better fix it. And before I know it, the metaphorical cabinet under the sink is all over the kitchen floor. And my boss is like, what about that thing you promised? And I'll be like,
what about what we paid you to accomplish? You got that done? Where's that?
Oh, God. Yes. So I'm going to talk about that first, and then I'm just going to touch on the medication piece. Actually, just kidding. I'll flip it. I personally started ADHD medication less than 6 months ago. And it's because in the unwhelming process, when I started with it's also overwhelming step and acknowledging where I am and how we got here. This is a direct result, no kidding, of scrolling social media and finding TikTok influencers that talked about ADHD. When I would scroll across these 15 to 30-second videos, especially of women talking about what ADHD looks like for them, I would go, holy shit, that's not just me. That's not a character flaw. That's not my failure. That's a thing. That's how my brain works. And it really led me to doing a lot more of my own research about how ADHD looks in women and what we can do about it. And what are the, not just the side effects of medication in terms of physiology or biology, but what are the side effects of medication societally? We carry incredible shame about taking medication for disorders that do not show up physically. No one shames a diabetic for taking insulin shots. Nobody shames someone who needs thyroid help. Nobody will shame a cancer patient for going to get chemo, or mostly people will. But if somebody is taking an antidepressant or a medication to help manage ADHD, or an antipsychotic, or medication, whether it is from big pharma or it is homegrown, we will carry the shame and we battle that. And especially as women, because societally, we are seen as caretakers. And so we are supposed to be able to manage everything, especially everyone and everything else, before we take care of ourselves. So there's this huge complex web wrapped up in why women don't medicate ADHD, right? We're supposed to be able to handle it all. We're not supposed to need it. We're probably just need a nap, or we're hysterical, right? And we have a long history of being shamed by the medical community, by our families, by society. And so making the decision to medicate or not medicate is absolutely one of the most personal decisions you can possibly make.
And it doesn't solve everything.
That is correct. And it may be that you medicate for ADHD and the first medication you take doesn't work. It may be that you medicate for depression and anxiety and you find that your ADHD is suddenly under control, or vice versa. You may find that a medication you take doesn't work. I'm just going to sound like a broken record. The unwhelming process works for almost everything. And if you're considering medication, use the unwhelming process. Acknowledge how you got here. Acknowledge those feelings. Slow down to speed up. Take some time to honestly track your symptoms and the way you're managing them so that when you go to talk to, my recommendation is more than one provider, you have an accurate accounting of where you are right now. And then when you start taking medication, you have systems and solutions in place to make sure that you are using that medication so that it works for you and that you know if it's working for you. I'm somebody who takes a lot of supplements so that I can stay healthy and I know exactly what I need to take. I don't mess with the system. And every 2 weeks, I dump all of my pills into 2 pill sorters so that I only have to do it twice a month. And I literally have an entire system and timers and medication in specific locations in my house so that I'm sure that I'm taking it, so that I know, once again, that I'm honestly following this system and I can track how that works. So that's what I have to say about medication. What I have to say about being a leader and managing ADHD is the importance of an accountability buddy or accountability buddies in your personal and professional life. I'd say as a leader, that's one of the most important pieces, because the patriarchy and white capitalism is set up to reward individualism. And so we are within that system expected to do it all ourselves. And if we try to do that, especially as emerging leaders, we're going to listen to a committee of one and we're going to say, am I doing this right? And your inner asshole will say, absolutely not. And the rest of your ego will go, of course you are, but you don't really have an external source of feedback. So when you're trying to figure out what is your leadership style, how do I stay on track? How do I present a leader that is worthy of being followed? In a business setting, I'd say your accountability buddies are going to be your go-to place to make sure that all of your other pieces are staying where they're supposed to be. I have a million other ideas and a million other experiences and a lot of what are now funny, but also quite cringy stories about my own experiences with ADHD, but I have the rest of my life to do that. And I own the business, so I can do 7 Unwhelminars on ADHD if I want to, if you want me to. Yeah. It is now 11:58 my time, which means we have 2 minutes left. This is where I do a little infomercial on Unwhelm Coaching. And I tell you, go to unwhelmcoaching.com. We have a couple of amazing free offerings that happen all the time. These Unwhelminars happen every Friday. We will post the videos recording our Unwhelminars. They will also be broken down into bite-sized pieces. So if you've only got a few minutes, you can watch a 3-minute video or a 2-minute video. We have the free membership area where you get the newsletter with the blog posts, the recordings, the announcements about Unwhelminars, and some of the contents of my head in a very structured format, so it won't overwhelm you. We have also upcoming events on our website. We have not so free offerings that are absolutely worth every penny, and that's one-on-one coaching, group coaching, corporate training, team building, all of those things that sound really boring, and you may have had awful experiences with them in the past, but we make it so much fun and we rock at it, and we invite you to take part of that. We have memberships on the website that give you access to limited. So you get an hour of free coaching, you get an hour of group coaching, you get some extra tools. We're building out the website and our presence, so we'll be incorporating a lot more things. So keep coming back to the website, keep coming to Unwhelminars, and keep doing the unwhelming process and practicing unwhelming. Once again, I would like to thank my capable and extremely deeply responsible accountability buddy, Elise Padilla, and partner in business, for showing up for me here and always. And I'd like to thank my friends and community members that joined us today. Like and subscribe, or do all the things you need to do. Check us on social media. We appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, hey, we're getting unwhelmed. You can catch all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, which you can find in the footer of our website. Commercial over for now.